So in this video, we're going to continue to work with our bracket here. What we're going to show in this video is how you can add a spreadsheet and change the parameters in this bracket. So this is again an example of how to use spreadsheets in FreeCAD to drive the parametric model. The model is already parametric, so you can already change features here by modifying certain things. What a spreadsheet allows us to do is we can have a table of dimensions that we want to change, and we can make those changes in the spreadsheet, and they'll be reflected in the model itself. Now, there are other ways we can do that. So we could do it with dynamic data, or we could do it with variable sets. In this video, we're just going to look at the spreadsheet version because I'll be honest with you, I use spreadsheets more than anything else when I do parametric models that I want to change. And I will only implement a spreadsheet if I'm going to change that model significantly and more than once. If I'm only going to do it once, I'm just going to modify it through the model tree here. But if I want to do something where perhaps I'm going to make this bracket in several different sizes and I want to be able to make those modifications easily, I can do that in a spreadsheet and it will allow me to make those changes on demand. So again, I'm going to show you how I would implement it already having this model. Now, you could start out with a spreadsheet and build the model around the spreadsheet if you wanted to. I oftentimes will do that, but in this particular case, we already made this model. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at things like changing the centers of these parts here, or maybe looking at changing the number of clips here. So imagine we had 4 instead of 3 or 2 instead of 3. That might be something that we want to have a look at too. So let's see how we do that. So we're going to go into the spreadsheet workbench. And again, if you don't have the spreadsheet workbench, I think you should have it. But if you don't, you can always go into the add-on manager and you can add all of the workbenches that you would like. I have that spreadsheet workbench here. And now I'm going to create a new spreadsheet. So I just click that, and here is our spreadsheet. What we have to do is we have to decide what parts of this we want to manage through the spreadsheet. One thing I can show you is that if you go to the window and you hit tile, you can see both your spreadsheet and the model at the same time. Can be helpful. Then I'm going to look at what am I going to do here. So I have several pieces that I might want to be able to modify. So if I go into this sketch, which is my original piece here, I might want to have that length, and I might want to have this height, and I might want to have this all listed in my spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and we'll do that. We'll call this one length. So in a spreadsheet, you can call your fields anything you want to call them. So I'm going to call it length. And I'm going to call it height. And I'm going to call it upper width. And I'm going to call it lower width. Now, do I need to put these radii in as dimensions? Probably not, but I could if I wanted to. So I could give that a unique name and that a unique name, and that would work. Now what we want to do is we want to make this field equal length. So what we're going to do is we're going to alias it, and I'm going to show you how to do that manually. There is actually a macro that will allow you to do that automatically, but I'm going to do it manually so you can see how to do it. Literally, I just click into the field that I want to be called length, go up here where it says alias, and I just type length. Now, I could equally go into this field, copy this, and paste it up there. The only downside of that is when in a spreadsheet, when something is text, it has an apostrophe at the beginning to indicate that it's text. And that will go into your alias and it won't work. So you'll have to edit it up there. So depending on how good of a typer you are, it might just be easier just to type the word. So I'm going to go back into this square. Now it's important. Another thing to watch out for, you don't want to be in this one and alias that as height. You're going to be in the value field and you're going to alias that as height. And if you look, once I've aliased something, the cell changes background color to yellow. So that's another important thing. Now, I always make my alias the exact word I have here. You don't have to, but that's what I do to make it make sense. So that one's going to be called upper width. And this one's going to be called lower width. Now, the easy alias macro that's available, you literally can highlight them all and it will automatically do that for you one by one. So it makes that much easier. But I wanted to show you how to do it manually because some of you may not be comfortable running macros, and it's always better to know how to do something from the beginning. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace those values with the actual value that's in there. So if I look at this, 70.7, I'm just going to make this value 70.7. So I'm just going to type that value in. And I'm going to make this height 61.2. And you may be asking, why would I use a spreadsheet if I'm just going to put the same values in? Well, I'm going to replace these values with the spreadsheet value. Once I've done that, I can change them to anything I like, but I want them to be sensible to start with. So that's why I'm using the same values here. And if I look there, that one is 22.2. And this one is 8.8. So now that I've done that, I can replace these values in the sketch. Now, of course, I'm editing this sketch. So I'm in the editor, and I'm going to close my spreadsheet, or I'm going to minimize my spreadsheet so I can maximize my sketch so that you can see what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that 70.7. I'm going to double click it to bring it into its editing. And then over here on the right is this little enter an expression bubble. And so you go into the expression editor. Once I do that, I can now type spreadsheet. And you can see that the thing is called spreadsheet. And then inside the spreadsheet, I can pick any of those particular spreadsheet columns or fields. So now I'm picking length. You can see also that the result is 70.7. So now if I hit enter and say OK, and say OK to that one, notice that my dimension has changed color. It is now brown color, which means that it has some expression assigned to it. I'm going to go into this one next. And then I'm going to go in here. And one thing that may help you is if you rename your spreadsheet to something with a shorter name, you don't have to type spreadsheet every time. So you can call the spreadsheet SS, or you can call it X, call it whatever you want. It makes it a little easier. The other thing is when you first type the information, so if I start typing height, you can see already there is a height. I can use my down arrow to select it and then just press enter. And then I already have it. And then I'm just going to use my tab key to go to the OK button and then OK again. And now that one's changed. I'm going to do the same here. So I'm going to hit that little expression editor. I'm going to say spreadsheet. And I'm going to say upper width. As soon as I hit U, it narrowed down my options. So I just use my down arrow, pick that, hit enter, go to my tab key to go to OK, and then OK once more, and that one's done. And then I'm going to do this final one. I'm going to hit this guy, and I'm going to say spreadsheet. As soon as I SP, I see spreadsheet. And then I'm going to say lower width. Hit that, tab off there, say OK, say OK. And now this whole sketch is done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that. And there's our model. So I'm going to tile once more so you can see my spreadsheet. And then I'm going to change these dimensions. So I'll change this to 85. And I'm going to tab away from there. And you can see that that has changed. I'm going to change my height to 65. Tab away from there. And you can see that it's changed height. And I'm going to change my upper width to 25. And you'll see that it updates there. And then I'm just going to minimize my spreadsheet. I'm going to maximize my model. And you'll see all of these things have changed per my dimensions. Now, one thing you have to be careful is once you do that, you can break things like fillets. You can break things like the way that it updates certain things. So this fillet here is on this length, and once it goes beyond there, it's going to break it. So I think that's what broke that one when I changed that width. So you have to be careful how you're changing things. And what we probably need to do is fix that fillet to say that that fillet was only the difference between this width and this piece here. So we can do math in our spreadsheet. So let's go in where this fillet is, and we can see the radius here is 4 millimeters. So what we can say is whatever that width is minus that width, or actually it's going to be this distance, we can figure out what that fillet should be. So let's see what's involved in doing that and see if we can make that work. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that nothing breaks when we change things using a spreadsheet. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to fix that part, and then I'll show you how I've fixed. Okay, so let me catch you up with what we've done here. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take, I'm just going to maximize that window again. I wanted to take the dimensions for this bottom part and put those in the spreadsheet too. So what I've done is I created the base. This is just a title, so you can put whatever you like. I created the base from the base drawing, so I'm going to go into that drawing, which is here from that sketch. Just put that down there. So I took all of these dimensions that you can see here. I took all of those and added them to the spreadsheet, so they're all listed on the spreadsheet. So the back width 44.5, that's this dimension here. The front width is this dimension, and let's just tile those up again so you can see what's going on. So that front dimension is the front width. The depth is this one. The back to the center is this dimension here. So it's from this back line to the origin point. And then the hole diameter. So up here, the hole to the origin. So it's from the center of the hole again to the origin. The diameter of the inset, it happened to mention as a diameter, so it's actually a radius there, but it's a full diameter there if you see the whole circle. And then the diameter to the origin, so this dimension from here back to the origin. So I have all of those dimensions, And now what I'm able to do is calculate that bottom fillet based on this width minus the distance from the back to the origin, which gives me the distance from here to here, and then minus the lower width, which is that piece sticking up. Let me just show you that. From that distance to the origin, this back part is right on the origin. So I want the distance from here to here minus the distance from here to here, leaves me amount for this radius. But what I also did, if you look at the math here, I took the depth, the back to the center, the lower width, and then I also included a 0.5 millimeter of clearance. What that does is it just gives me an extra 0.5 millimeter there so that this doesn't end directly on here, because if it does, it'll fail. So now, just to see that in action, if I go here and I change the base depth, so I'm going to take that, I'm going to make that 20. We'll change that. You see that changed, and you'll also see that the calculated amount changed. So I'm going to do that one more time. I'll make it 30. And you can just watch up here when I do that. You can see that went to 12.5. So it's creating that fillet based on the size of this base. So it's not going to mess that up. And then, of course, we can do similar things with the spreadsheet. I can change the hole dimensions there. So these hole diameters, they're currently 4.2. I'm going to change them to 6. And you see the holes change from the spreadsheet. So once again, it's just a matter of working through the sketches and adding them to the spreadsheet. And the way that I've done that in this spreadsheet is I have my base is here, and the main part of the model is here. And I can obviously add any of the features I want to the spreadsheet, and we will have a completely parametric model that will be driven by our spreadsheet, so that when anything that we change, we can make that happen with the spreadsheet. Now, what we can do is we can use a conditional, and we can say if this length is a certain length, then you can make more of these instances. We can also say if this length is above a certain length, it has to be longer so that we can fit an extra instance in there. So conditionals are something that you can add in the spreadsheet, and you can make that happen. I'll show you that in a different video. I want to try and keep this one short. I took the spreadsheet and I added information for all of the areas. So this is the body and the base and the cutout, which is this shape here. The mirror, which is this part over here. And the triangle, which is this guy here. So what we did is we've calculated now this length based on how many instances of this cutout we have. So if we go down to the cutout, there's one called cutout instance. If I change that, let's go from 3, say, to 5, you'll see that the model automatically figures out how long this should be based on how many cutouts there are. So if you look up here, this calculated value now is 117. And my bottom fillet is also calculating based on the width of this piece. So to make sure that we've got the right amount of fillet in there. And I'm also calculating the width of this mirror to make sure it's big enough that it cuts out all of that area when we do it. So also calculating the triangle distance. So this distance from here back to here, I'm calculating that based on the length of this piece. So the logical extrapolation of this model would be to add additional cutouts. So if I change that to 4, you'll see everything will recalculate itself. And now we have 4 cutouts with the same distances, and these are all recalculated. Now what I've done is there are no calculations in the dimensions themselves. All the calculations are in the spreadsheet here. And so you can see, I'll show you that length calculation. You can see, if we look here, to do a calculation, it's just equals. And then I can use these aliases for these fields. I could equally use, so where this says cut out lower width, and come down here, the lower width is this one. So I could have said B25, which would be this cell. Or I can use its alias, which is CO lower width in my calculation. Using the aliases just makes it more readable. So the cutout lower width times the cutout number of instances plus the cutout distance to the back times the cutout number of instances plus 1. So that's how we calculate that length. And so we're doing it based on the number of instances here. So if I change that number of instances, that length is going to change automatically. Stop it there. And if you have any questions about how to add things to the spreadsheet and make this thing parametric driven by a spreadsheet, certainly leave me a message. I want to make sure that you understand how to add things to the spreadsheet before we get into anything too complex. And once again, I can change all of the parameters that I've already put in the spreadsheet, and I'll work my way through and put all the rest of it into there so that my patrons will get this file and they'll be able to see how that all works. Once again, thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. The next video is going to cover how to make a technical drawing of this bracket. And then the video following that is going to use this bracket in an assembly. So I'll show you how to create an assembly in FreeCAD 2. So next video is a technical drawing. If you make parts like this and you just make them with a 3D printer, you don't need a drawing. But if it's something that you're fabricating, if you're going to make it out of wood, you may need a drawing so you can take that into your workshop and make that part. And equally, if you want to use this in an assembly, if I want to have multiple brackets and put the pieces that fit in here into my assembly, you might want to see how that works. So that'll be in the third video after this one. Any questions, any suggestions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks.